We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Tesam Beis in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 59b. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds you don't necessarily need a mizbeach for the sacrificial portions of the karbonos, with the exception of the blood. The blood you do need a mizbeach. Otherwise, you don't necessarily need a mizbeach. And the Gemara brought a brisa in which Rabbi Yehuda brings this opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says that at the time of the inauguration of the Beis Hamikdash, the mizbeach of Shlomo HaMelech, which was made out of stones, it was too small for all of the karbonos, and so therefore they sanctified the floor of the Azara for this purpose. And Rabbi Yossi, he argues on Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi says it's not true. Really, the Mizbeach of Shlomo HaMelech certainly was large enough, because it says by the Mizbeach of copper of Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, V'alo kvar nemar, it says in the Pasuk, Elef olos yale Shlomo, ala Mizbeachu, it says that 1,000 olos Shlomo brought on that Mizbeach, the full Pasuk over there. It says, Vayelech HaMelech Givona, this is talking about when the Mizbeach, again, of Moshe Rabbeinu was in Givon. He went to Lizboach Sham to sacrifice over there. Ki Bama Hagedola, that was the great Bama. Elef Olos Yala Shlomo ala Mizbeachu. It says that he brought 1,000 Olos on that Mizbeach. V'ilu beveiso lovim hu. Now, whereas by the Beis Hamikdash it says Vayizbach Shlomo Zevach Hashlamim Asher Zavach LaHashem. Shlomo HaMelech brought the karbonos bakar esrim u'shnayim elef. He brought 22,000 bakar. The pasuk goes on to say V'tzon meya ve'esrim elef. He brought son 120,000. And the point over here is, as the Gemara continues, Ucheshatam magia lecheshben olos. When you take a calculation of the amount of olos, the amount of karbonos, ulaminyan amos, and the amount of amos of space on the mizbeach to bring these karbonos, zeh gadol mizeh. Actually, this one is bigger than this one. Meaning to say, Shlomo HaMelech actually does have more space. It would not have been too small. And so, therefore, what is the meaning of the pasuk? Elamau katan mehachil. What does it mean that it was too small to receive the karbonos? That pasuk actually means ka'adam ha'omer l'chavero. It's like a person who says to his friend ploni nanasu, that so and so is a nanas. A nanas means that he's a dwarf. Upasol avod. It's just a way of saying that it's disqualified for the avodah. The way Rabbi Yossi understands the pasuk is we were not talking about the mizbeach of Shlomo HaMelech. We're talking about the mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu. That was disqualified. And Rashi explains elef olos yale Shlomo cheshato magia lecheshben olos uleminyan amos. When you do a calculation, how many karbonos are being brought in the amount of space. Shaya mizbeach avonim shel Shlomo odef olav zeh shel Shlomo gadol mishel Moshe. The mizbeach of stones of Shlomo was greater, was larger than that of Moshe. Lefi tzorach ha'olos, even according to the amount of karbonos, he had more space. Sharei mizbeach shel Moshe ksibbe, because by the mizbeach of Moshe it says hey amos orech v'hei amos rochav. It was 5 amos in length, 5 amos in width. Tzei mehem makam kronos ama l'chol tzad. Take away the amma in terms of the corners. Umakam hilach raglei hakohanim. Take away the area where the kohanim walk. That's amma lifnim min hakronos saviv. That's an amma within, inside, within the kronos, around saviv hamarocha, around the marocha, the pile of wood which they used to burn the karbonos. Nimsa makam hamarocha amma alama. It turns out that the area of the marocha itself, that was an amma by an amma, hachi amrina lekamon bepirkin. That's what we're going to say later on in the perek. Yesod v'sovev lo hayu mematin ba'orcho v'rochvo. The base of the mizbeach, the ledge of the mizbeach, that did not minimize the length and the width. Lefisha makifin ubolt and svivav, because those stuck out outside. Ma'aseh reshes nechoshes v'oyasovavo. That was the ma'aseh reshes nechoshes that surround. Uve mizbeach she'asa Shlomo. Now in the mizbeach that Shlomo made, hayom makom hamarocha chaf al chaf l'Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi holds that the area of the marocha was actually 20 by 20. K'nitnan b'Meseches midos chelku l'chaf ritzuos kol achas v'achas barochav amo v'orech esrim harei daled meos orech barochav amo ve'in l'cha ama al ama she'ena mechazekes levar elef. 1 amma by 1 amma is able to take 1,000, as we said, liyom shoisa eshel shamayim mimaheres lechol, because the fire of heaven would quickly consume the karbonos. Harei daled meos elef, so that comes out to 400,000. And the idea over here in Rashi is that if you calculate the amount of 1 amma by 1 amma spaces in Shlomo HaMelech's mizbeach, so again you have 400 of those. That's what it means, daled meos orech barochav amma. So you're going to have 400 of those amma by amma, and each amma by amma is able to take 1,000, and so therefore it comes out to 400,000 sacrifices, much more than was necessary. It certainly was large enough. And so Rashi continues, Alamau omer katan mehachil. So what does the pasuk mean when it says it was too small for receiving? Lav b'mizbeach avonim kamar. That's not talking about the stone mizbeach of Shlomo HaMelech u'mishamahu yomen in terms of that day of the inauguration. That wasn't the issue. Ela l'mizbeach hanechoshes kamar. Rather, the pasuk is talking about the copper mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu. Uval l'poslo liolim. And the point of the pasuk is simply to say that mizbeach was now disqualified forever. Shasilko, that it's removed. Umashatola hakosov ketano ba'olos shaloso hayom. And the only reason the pasuk is mentioning that it was too small for the karbanos of the day, that's lishna ma'al yanakat. That's just a nice way to say it. Ka'adam shomer lechaveiro ba'adam shadifsel. It's like a person who says to his friend who's disqualified, nanos ploni, so and so, the dwarf. It's lishna ma'al. That's a nicer way of saying it. Velo amar nifsal ploni. It's nicer than saying that nifsal ploni, that so and so is disqualified. V'nifsal le'avoda. Again, it was disqualified for the avoda. Lav maskana da'adam omer. This is not the conclusion of a person says to his friend. Elo Rabbi Yossi kamar la. This is Rabbi Yossi saying it. V'yoso ploni pasal li'avoda v'hu korei lo nanos. That's so and so. He's pasal li'avoda, and he's referred to as a nanos, and that's what the pasuk also is referring to the mizbeach as too small. It really simply means that mizbeach was disqualified. And again, looking back at the pasuk on the previous Amud, the pasuk was, Bayomahu Kidash HaMelech es Toch HaChotzar. On that day, Shlomo HaMelech, the king, he sanctified the middle of the courtyard, Asher Lifnei Beis Hashem, which was before the Beis Hashem. Ki also Shom es HaOlav es HaMincha ves Chel ve'Hashlamim Ki Mizbach HaNechoshes Asher Lifnei Hashem Koton Mehachil. Because the Mizbach HaNechoshes, the copper Mizbeach, according to Rabbi Yossi, that refers to the Mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu, which was copper, and it doesn't mean it was really too small. It just means that was disqualified. As ha'olav, as ha'mincha, as ha'shlamim was disqualified from using that particular mizbeach. And again, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what does the pasuk mean? Mizbach hanachoshes is actually a reference to the mizbach avonim, that the mizbeach of Shlomo HaMelech was too small, as Rashi did say on the previous Amud. Rashi said on the previous Amud, hachi mashmakra, that Rabbi Yehuda hachi mashmakra. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the pasuk should be understood, ki mizbach avonim asher tachas mizbach hanachoshes katan haya. The mizbach avonim which replaced the mizbach hanachoshes, that was too small. That's how Rabbi Yehuda understands the pasuk. And the Gemara continues, Rabbi Yehuda. Now Rabbi Yehuda, how does he respond to Rabbi Yossi? Shapir ka'amar Rabbi Yossi. Isn't Rabbi Yossi saying correctly? There certainly should have been enough space on the Mizbeach of Shlomo HaMelech. And the Gemara answers, Rabbi Yehuda l'taimei. Rabbi Yehuda follows his opinion. Di'amar Mizbeach she'asa Moshe gadol haya. He says that the Mizbeach that Moshe made was actually much larger, and therefore if you compare the sizes of the various Mizbeachs, of the Mizbeach of Moshe and Shlomo HaMelech's Mizbeach does turn out to be too small for all of those karbanos. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Chomesh Amos Orech, the Chomesh Amos Rochav, it says that the Mizbeach was 5 amos long and 5 amos wide. Devarim Kechsava and Divrei Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says, interpreted exactly as it's written. It was 5 by 5. It was very small, as Rabbi Yossi said. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rabbi Yehuda says, no, Nemar Kan Ravua. It says over here the word Ravua. V'Nemar Lahalon Ravua, and it says Ravua over there. This is referring to a pasuk in Yecheskel. Taking a look at the two psukim, the pasuk says, V'yasas ha-mizbeach hatzei shitim chomesh amos orech v'chomesh amos rochev ravua yeh ha-mizbeach. It's going to be square. It says ravua by this mizbeach of Moshe. And then in Yechezkel it says, V'ha'ariel shtei mesrei orech v'shtei mesrei rochav ravua el arba'as ravav. The Ariel is referring to the ma'aracha of the mizbeach. That's what it's referring to in Yechezkel. It also uses the word ravua. So it says ravua over here. It says ravua over there. And so therefore, malahalon meyem tziyaso hayamode, just like over there, the measuring was actually from the middle. We're not measuring the full length. We're measuring from the middle outward. So too afkan, so too over here, meyem tziyaso hayamode, we're actually measuring from the middle. What that essentially means to say is when it says chomesh amos orech, that the Mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu was 5 amos in length, it was 5 amos from the middle. It was actually a total of 10 amos in length, 10 amos in width. It was actually double the size, according to Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara continues and asks, V'hasa minola. Now over there, from where do we know that we're measuring from the middle? Meaning in that pasuk in Yechezkel. T'chsiv, because it's written, V'ha'ariel shtei mesrei amo l'chol ruach. It says that the Ariel, again, the same Ariel we're talking about, it says shtei mesrei orech. It was 12 l'chol ruach. Oeinu ela yud beis al yud beis. Or maybe it means 12 by 12. Does it mean from the middle 12 in every direction, or does it mean 12 by 12? Kishu omer, when it says el arba'as revav, when it says in the pasuk el arba'as revav, that's the end of the pasuk, Ravua el arba'as revav. When it says that, Melamed, that teaches Shemei emtzahu moded. That pasuk is teaching that we're measuring from the middle, and so therefore, again, just like we're measuring from the middle over there, so too we're measuring from the middle over here by the Mizbeach of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the Gemara continues now for Rabbi Yossi. Now Rabbi Yossi, what does he do with this Gezeira Shava of Ravua? Ki Gomar Gezeira Shava begova hu de Gomer. He actually learns the Gezeira Shava is referring not to the width and the length of the Mizbeach, it's referring to the height of the Mizbeach. The Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, V'shalosh amos komoso, it says that it was 3 amos high. Devarim kechsavan divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says it means exactly what's written. It means that it's 3 amos high. Again, that's going back to the same pasuk. The pasuk said, V'yosisas hamizbeach atzei shitim 5 amos orech, v'chamesh amos rochev, ravua yiyah hamizbeach, v'shalosh amos komoso was 3 amos high. Rabbi Yehuda interprets that as it's written. Rabbi Yossi says, Nemar kan ravua. Again, it says over here ravua. V'nemar lahalon ravua, and it says over there ravua. This is a different area where it says ravua. It's talking about the inner mizbeach. The full pasuk over there is ama orko v'ama rachbo ravua yiyah. It's an ama length, ama width. Ravua yiyah, it's a square. V'amosayim komoso, and 2 amos high. Mimenu karnosov, from it come its horns, come its corners, and that's the gezerah shavah. Malahala, now just like over there, govo pishnayim karko, the height of the inner mizbeach, as we just saw, amosayim komoso, it was 2 amos tall. It's double the amount of its length. So he says the same thing, afkan sotu over here, the outer mizbeach, pishnayim karko, we're going to say govo, that the height is double the length, and so therefore Rabbi Yossi would understand that the height of the mizbeach was 10 amos, which is double the length. And the Brisa continues, Amar le Rabbi Yehuda said to him, he said back to Rabbi Yossi, how can it be that the mizbeach was that tall? Efshar kohen omer al gavei hamizbeach, is it possible the kohen would stand on the mizbeach, v'avoda biyad, when he's doing the service, v'cholam roan osomi bachutz, and everybody would be able to see him from outside, so how can it be that the mizbeach was so high? Amar lo Rabbi Yossi said back to him, v'halo kvar nemar, but it already says, v'es kalei hachotzer, v'es mosach shar hachotzer ashar la-mishkan, v'ala mizbeach, it talks about the kalei hachotzer, the curtains, and it mentions the mizbeach, and we understand as follows, ma mishkan yud amos, just like the mishkan is 10 amos, af mizbeach yud amos, so to the mizbeach is 10 amos, v'yomer kloim chomesh esrei, and it says the curtains were 15, and Rashi explains, v'halo kvar nemar v'koma hayamos, Rabbi Yehuda says to Rabbi Yossi, doesn't it say that the curtains were just 5 amos high? This is the part of the Gemara that was in parentheses, we didn't read that, but Rashi has that girsa, de'in gova hekef hakloim shel chotzer al hayamos, again the height of the curtains of the chotzer was only 5 amos, so efshar kain sheyei kohen barosh hamizbeach va'avoda biyadu, is it possible the mizbeach was so tall that everyone would be able to see him? And then Rabbi Yossi responded, ma mishkan sorich kloim lechotzer sevivav mukaf gova yud amos, dehahachi have a gova dechsiv yud amos orech hakeresh, the mishkan was 10 amos, the beams of the mishkan were 10 amos, and so to the kloim, so to the curtains were actually 10 amos. And Rashi continues, af mizbeach, we'll take a look at the girsa of the Shinuya Nuschos, says the girsa is also the mizbeach tzorech kalei hachotzer shesvivav gavoy yud amos, the kalei hachotzer that surrounded it, they needed to be 10 amos. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Samech Amud Aleph.